Yes, mates, how's it going? My name's Lee, and welcome back to the FPL Punk YouTube channel, where we try to dominate FPL one game week at a time. So today, we'll go for a game week 13 preview and look to highlight good or bad fixtures, who to captain, and try to find those differential transfers. If you enjoy FPL content, please subscribe to the channel. Anyway, let's rock and roll.
Be strong.
Right, mates, first up on the left-hand side, we've got the next 5 fixtures for every team in the league. This is taken from Fantasy Football Scout. I'll leave a link down below to their stuff. In the middle, we've got the game week 13 fixtures, and I've put them in in a graph, depending on how difficult they are and how many goals I think each team will score. So in the bottom left-hand corner, with the likes of Luton and Sheffield United, I think they're both tough games for those teams, and I don't think they'll score a lot of goals. So that arrow starts at red and moves to green. So the tough games are at the bottom. Easier or better, nicer fixtures are at the top for those teams. Working from left to right, this is the amount of goals that I predict those teams to score. So teams on the left, the likes of Man United, Burnley, Wolves, I don't think will score a lot of goals. Where the likes of Spurs, Man City and Arsenal, I think will score a few goals within their respective fixtures. So the likes of Man City versus Liverpool that I've highlighted as fixture of the game week, I've predicted 3-2 to Man City, and that's represented by my little graph there. So we've got Man City that's slightly higher than Liverpool. I think they're at home. I think it's a better fixture for Man City, and as a result, I think they'll score more goals. I think it's a tough game for Liverpool, but I still think they're capable of scoring goals, and that's the reason why they're so far along on the left to right scale. The likes of Brentford versus Arsenal, I think it's a better game for Brentford, but I think Arsenal have the ability to score more goals than the likes of Spurs versus Villa. I think it's a good game for both teams. And Spurs have got a lot of injuries, particularly in defence, that the likes of Diaby and Ollie Watkins can hopefully expose. But we all know Villa like to play a high line every now and again, and if Son can time his runs right, which we all know he can exploit that space in behind and get on the score sheet. So that game in particular is a good game for both teams, and I think there'll be a few goals in that game as well. I can see that being a 3-2 or a 3-1 to either team in there as well. Whereas the likes of Man United versus Everton, I think it's a really good game for Man United. I don't necessarily think it's a bad game for Everton. I just think they're not in a great spot right now, but I don't think it'll be a very high scoring game. I'll come on some form and the most informed teams in a moment, and we can see that Man United, they haven't scored a lot of goals in the last five games. They've only scored 6 goals in the last 5. So I can see this being I think this got 1-0 Man United written all over it. So I was just looking at some form from the previous 5 games, and there's a few things that kind of surprised me. So I thought it was quite an interesting thing to pop into this video here. At the top, we've got Man United that have got 4 wins from the past 5 games. They obviously lost against Man City, which is the L there. They've only scored 6 goals in the last 5 games, like I said a moment ago. So they are struggling to score goals, but they're not conceding a lot of goals at the same time. So take it how you want. Is that eventually going to break, or are they going to keep continuing games 1-0, 1-0 over and over again? Yeah, I've got a nice fixture one for a couple of games now, so we'll kind of see how that one works for them. Next, we've got Liverpool and Man City, both in really, really good form, scoring a lot of goals. Man City are conceding more goals than I thought they would be doing. Liverpool's defence is solid, and it's a lot better than people think it is this season. They are unbeaten in the last 5, and I think that'll be a really entertaining game, but I can see Man City sneaking that one. There are a couple of surprise entries in terms of position on this list right now. They obviously haven't taken into account Everton's point deduction, but Everton are actually on a decent run of form, so they might surprise United in that game, and maybe I'm not giving them the respect they deserve. So I think it'll be a really tough game for both teams, but I still think Man United will edge that game 1-0. Brighton right down in 14th. They're really struggling at the moment. I think they're struggling with demands of different competitions, of rotating players, of picking up injuries. I think they are struggling. Then you get the likes of West Ham and Palace, who I seem to think are having pretty good seasons, but they're obviously not in terms of the form table. They seem to be getting Jared Bowen is scoring every single week, but it doesn't seem to be turning into results in terms of wins for that team. There's no surprise that Sheffield United, Luton and Burnley down at the bottom. They're all struggling to score goals and conceding a mass amount of goals, but Luton's goal difference in those 5 games is only -4, which isn't too bad actually. Like, scored 4 goals, conceded 8 in the last 5. I think that's a decent effort from them, to be fair to them. And I think if they can continue that, I think they will pick up results here and there, and they'll surprise a few teams. I think the likes of Spurs have suffered from the last 2 losses. Chelsea I seem to think are doing better than what they are. Their 4-4 against Man City in the last game has really boosted their kind of goals and conceded. So it's kind of like a bit of an anomaly from that point of view. But there are some standout things. Is there anything that surprised you from this form table? Leave a comment down below and let me know who surprised you the most in terms of form. So next up, we've got some injury and suspension updates and news. Jared Bowen, knee injury. The FPL site predicts that there's a 75% chance that he might play in the next game against Burnley. I did see a tweet from the ex-West Ham United employee who said he's got a bit of fluid on his knee, and they'll kind of assess it as they kind of go along, but they are relatively optimistic that he might actually play in that game. Ben White, muscle injury. Whatever this muscle injury is, like, we don't get a lot from Arteta anyway. I am hoping for more news, and I'm hoping that he does come back and play. The site predicts there's a 75% chance that he'll play in that game. I think it's probably more 50-50, touch and go, assessing how he kind of goes on. These mysterious muscle injuries, they can be a little bit more serious and can prolong time out from games than people actually think they might. So it's a bit of a touch and go in my opinion, and we'll kind of assess that as we move along. Onto Matoma, he picks up a knock on international duty, and that's kind of all we know. And they put him down as a 50% chance to play. I think he's probably closer to 75 to 90% chance that Matoma might play in that game. I think they need him right now. They're not playing particularly well. They're not scoring a lot of goals. They're not creating a lot of goals. And I think they do need Matoma, unfortunately. So I think he will. Even if there's only a 50% chance he plays, I think they'll risk him and they'll play him in that game. The likes of Botman and Maddison, we don't really have that much information. Like in terms of James Maddison, we think he's going to be out for a long time, but we don't know really. If you have still got the likes of Maddison and Botman, I'd transfer both of them out. Like, we're not going to get a lot of news from Eddie Howe in terms of Botman, so he lies. He'll come out and say he's making progress. Yeah, like, he is making progress because he's recovering all the time, but we don't know when he's going to be back. I'm assuming it's going to be New Year, but we don't actually know. Onto the big man, the robot himself, and he is capable of being injured. He does bleed, unfortunately, and he picked up an ankle injury on international duty. However, Fabrizio Romano, of all people, came out and said, nope, he's fine. He'll play against Liverpool, and he'll be fine, and he'll play in that. So if you have got him, I'm not concerned about Haaland playing. I think there's 95% chance he plays in that game, and I think they need him, to be honest. Like, I think they need him to play, especially against Liverpool, who are performing well this season. I think he's very important to them. Obviously, like he obviously scores all their goals, and I think they need him, mate. I think they just need to get him back in. A little mini suspension, yellow card, watch update. On 3 yellow cards at the moment, we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, Matoma, Cole Palmer, Hwang Hee-chan, Trippier, and Udoga. So if they get one more, then obviously they're quite close to the tightrope of being suspended. Currently on 4 yellow cards is Bruno Fernandes, Kabore, Douglas Luiz, and Digne. So you notice there's 2 Villa players there. If they both get suspended for the same game, they are quite important to the way they play. So if you've got the likes of Cash, Diaby, maybe even Ollie Watkins, if those 2 are suspended in the same game, I think it might hamper their chances for that particular game that those 2 are suspended for. Just something to keep in mind, and try to avoid players that do have maybe 3 or 4 yellow cards, particularly if you are thinking of transferring those in for the likes of Maddison and Matoma. One of the big questions this week is who to captain in game week 13. For me, it's between 2 players, Erling Haaland or Mo Salah. Erling Haaland, forward, 40 million, 82.8% owned for Man City. They're obviously playing each other, but Man City are playing at home, so I'd probably lean more towards Haaland personally. This season, he's got 96 points with 13 goals and 2 assists. His record against Liverpool, he's made 1 appearance and got no goals. Salah, on the other hand, 13 million midfielder, playing for Liverpool, 46.7% owned. He's actually got more points than Haaland this season, on 101, and that's made up of 10 goals and 4 assists. And playing for Liverpool in the league since he joined Liverpool, he's played 12 games against Man City with 7 goals and 3 assists. He got a decent record against Man City, to be fair to him. And I think this will be a really entertaining game. I think both players will score, but I would more opt for Haaland. He usually racks up more XG and a high amount of shots, particularly when he plays at home. I think Man City are a better home team, and I think Man City will win the game. Therefore, I think Haaland will be involved in those goals. And if he gets 2 returns, happy days. Some other players that you might consider, like you've got the likes of Ollie Watkins against Spurs. Can Watkins exploit Spurs' injury at the back? You've got the likes of Heung-min Son playing against Ollie Watkins' Villa. We all know Villa like to play that high line every now and again, just randomly play this high line in games. And if Son can time his runs right, he can just run right in that game. I'm not totally convinced by either of those. They haven't shown me enough that, particularly in the last game, that they could go on and haul. That's the thing with Haaland and Salah. I think both of these are capable of hauling because they are both on penalties. Moving on to the likes of Saka and Jared Bowen, I think same again. They're both decent options, and I can see why people might want to go there. But it's hard for me to ignore the likes of Erling Haaland and Mo Salah. If I was to rank them right now in terms of order, I'd go Erling Haaland number 1, Mo Salah number 2, maybe 3 and 4 is probably a tie between Ollie Watkins and Heung-min Son, and then after that you've got the likes of Jared Bowen if he is past fit against Burnley, maybe Saka, maybe like a couple of other players as well. But I think these two are the main hitters, and for me, I'm leaning more towards Erling Haaland, probably 60-40 right now, and I think he's the one to go for. Leave a comment down below if you are thinking of captaining anyone else. If I had to recommend any transfers this week, these 6 players would be quite high up on that list. So in defence, we've got the likes of William Saliba. We all know Arsenal defence is pretty solid this season. They're keeping a lot of clean sheets, and he does get the attacking return as well. I opted for Ben White, so if you have got any injuries in defence, maybe moving to the likes of Saliba might not be a bad option. It's a solid long-term hold. Or you might go for someone who's a bit more of a short-term punt in the likes of Joachim Anderson, one of the highest-scoring defenders in the game this season, and he's they've got that solid Palace defence, and he also chips in with the odd goal here and there as well. Onto his teammate into midfield, Abiriche Eze. He has had the odd injuries this season, but he scored in his last game, and everything runs through him. When Eze's fit, everything runs through him. He's a beast. He's on all set pieces. He's on penalties. And his baseline BPS is just so high that if he does get any return, like he's almost getting max bones every single time. So just something to keep in mind that if you are looking for that cheap midfielder, 6.1 million, I think Eze should be quite high up on your list. Onto Saka, and he's like a mini Mo Salah. He just ticks along slowly throughout the course of the season. He's not someone that I'm probably going to consider because I don't think Arsenal playing particularly well. Their system and their formation and their tactics don't suit Saka down to the T, in my opinion. Like, he's playing too far out wide, and I'd like him to move more centrally, get more shots away, get more crosses away, take his man on more. Just stick him on penalties. Like, he's a good penalty taker, and I don't understand why he's not on pens. And that's one of the things that kind of puts me off him a little bit. Like this whole indecision on whether he's nailed on penalties or not. Which brings me on to Mbeumo. Nailed on penalties, plays 90 minutes. It's just such a massive deciding factor for me right now, having these players that are going to play 90 minutes. Bryan Mbeumo has just been a beast. I was wrong. I didn't start with him. I brought him in for a couple of weeks and transferred him out. I was wrong at the beginning of the season. I'm wrong again now. I think we need him, mate. I think we just need to go back and just get him in and just suck it up. On to Darwin Núñez, and I was listening to the Above Average FPL podcast, and congrats for the bronze winner. Hopefully I can catch up one day and join you on that bronze award. Maybe one day, who knows? And it's got me a little Darwin curious. We all know that 4-goal haul, that monster haul is coming for Darwin one day, and I want to be a part of it, mate. I just really want to be a part of it. Like, if he goes big and he gets that 5 goals or whatever he's going to get, because we all know it's going to be something huge, and I miss out, I'll just be gutted. And if I'm a part of it, I'll just look back every single year and I just think, I'm a genius. You've got me a little bit Darwin curious, that's all I'm saying. I'm blaming Baker for this one. But yeah, if you do need an attacking option, I think Darwin is a good option. I'm just not convinced of his minutes, and that's where the risk is involved with someone like Darwin. Is he going to play 90 minutes? Probably not. But can he be devastating in those 30 to 60 minutes if he starts or comes on as a sub? 100%. He can easily score in those. Like, I seen a stat the other day where I think he's got something like 20 goal involvements this season at an average of 63 and one every 63 minutes. So he's clearly doing something right. And if you need a player in that position, I don't think he's a bad option. Like, I really don't. Leave a comment down below. Have you got Darwin? Are you thinking of bringing him in? Let's have a little chat, mate. So here I've selected 3 differential picks, and that's players that I've got less than 5% ownership. I've picked a defender, a midfielder, and a forward. Up first, we've got Reece James, defender for Chelsea. 5.3 million, 4.4% owned. We all know when Reece James is fit and he plays, he's a beast. And the injury concerns is the primary concern. I want a little bit more information. Like, I want that Newcastle game, maybe even the Brighton game before I start thinking about bringing him in, but you can't ignore those fixtures from game week 16 onwards. They've just got a great run of about 12 games with maybe one semi-difficult fixture in there. If you haven't got him, I think people will almost certainly be triple up on Chelsea from game week 16 onwards, and I think Reece James is probably going to be one of those. Unfortunately, like, we're all going to go back there, we're all going to get burnt again, but I like it, mate. He's a beast. Like, we all know what he can do, and if he stays fit, it's just going to be an absolute monster. So keep it in mind, if you do need a defender right now and you want to go somewhere real quick, I think even picking up Reece James this week isn't a bad option. Moving on to the midfielder, Bernardo Silva, 6.3 million midfielder playing for Man City, 2.5% owned. They have got a couple of difficult fixtures coming now with Liverpool and Spurs, but I'm almost certain Bernardo will play in those. He has returned in his last 3 games, and he just looks unbelievable right now. Like, he seems to have the favourability of Pep, and he seems to be starting and playing 90 minutes or playing the large percentage of games, particularly when it comes to minutes. I just think he's a really good pickup. Like, some of the things that puts me off him is that blank game week 18. We've all got Haaland. We're all probably going to have Mbumo. Can we afford to have another player that blanks in game week 18 in the likes of Bernardo? If you've got a decent bench and you can manoeuvre that thing around, then maybe go for someone like a second Man City asset in the likes of Bernardo. I think is a really good price, and I think he will return in those games. He is a big game player, and I think he's 100% nailed to start against Liverpool and Spurs. It's probably the easier games where I think he might get rested against the likes of Luton, Palace and Everton. But I think he's a really good pickup. I think he's an unbelievable player, and if you do need a midfielder, maybe consider Bernardo, not just for this week but for future weeks as well. And last but not least, moving on to the forward, Dominic Solanke, 6.4 million forward playing for Bournemouth, 3.9% owned. He's got 6 goals in 12 games this season. Play for Bournemouth. That's all I'm saying. If he continues that rate, he's going to get 19 goals in the league this season. It's an unbelievable return. And the way Bournemouth play, and if you haven't watched the BPS video from Above Average FPL, please do watch. I'll try and leave a link in the description below if I remember to do it. And that describes basically every time Solanke scores, like, he's almost guaranteed to get 2 or 3 bonus from that game. They've got a great run of games. He's a 90-minute man. Sheffield United in game week 13, Palace in game week 15, then from game week 17 to 19, Luton, Forest, Fulham, potentially on penalties, we don't know. What a player. I'm seriously considering bringing in Solanke for this week specifically, but I just think he's a solid player. That's something we need to think about now, and in a moment we'll discuss things to do with strategy and transfers and how to plan. So last but not least, we've got strategy. You really need to start thinking about long-term plans now. So we've got a nice little run from game week 13 to game week 17 where there aren't too many interruptions throughout that period. So try and plan your transfers to bring in the likes of reliable assets. Try and make long-term transfers and pick those 90-minute players. There's a lot of fixtures in a small amount of time, so try and look at players that you know are going to play every single week. The likes of Ollie Watkins, even though they come into a hard run, you know he's going to play 90 minutes every single week. The likes of Saka plays every single week, 90 minutes. Try and look at those kind of players as opposed to taking punts on players that have even the remote chance of a rotation risk. Obviously, we come on to game week 18 with a blank, and it's only one blank, but it's obviously Man City versus Brighton, and I touched on it a moment ago. We've all got Haaland. We're probably all going to have Mbumo. And if we go for a third Man City or Brentford player with the likes of Bernardo Silva or any other City player, we might have Pinnock or Flecken. Make sure you've got a decent bench, so you might have to make some transfers from now up to game week 18 to try and maneuver things around. So you've got decent coverage when you come into game week 18, because I can tell you right now, like, a lot of people will have strong teams in game week 18, and you don't want to be playing chips. You don't want to be playing free hits in that week, and you want to try and maneuver things around. You don't want to be using transfers for game week 18. Like, you don't want to be transferring Haaland out when you want him back. Like, even Mbumo, even though he's going to AFCON in game week 21, we've got a nice little run from in the 2 games after game week 18, and he might even have a double around that time as well. So keep it in mind. I don't think it's worth the transfer. Try and plan for that and for that blank game, and then moving on to game week 21, which is the start of AFCON. What are you going to do with your money like around that time from game week 21, and then I don't know when AFCON ends, but like the likes of Salah and the likes of Mbumo, what are you going to do with the Salah money? Are you just going to downgrade Salah to somebody? Just keep that money in the bank, and when Salah is back, straight back up to Salah? I don't think that's a bad strategy, to be honest with you. Or are you going to spread that money around? have these things in your head, because we all know when Salah's back, we're going to want him back. And if Egypt get knocked out early, we need to be able to react quite quick. So keep it in mind, try and make long-term decisions, long-term transfers, and not take these random punts here and there. Otherwise, you're just going to force yourself into hits, and we all know what that happens. It is a gamble. Sometimes they come off, but more than often than not, it's a gamble, and you start seeing red arrows. Right, mates, that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed. So today went through a Game Week 13 preview, looked at some fixtures and fixture swings, and who to captain, and try to look at some potential transfers and some differential players, and kind of mix it all together. So if you enjoyed today's video, please subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, all the usual jazz. Have a good day, peace and love.